In the year 20XX, the government enacted tax reform. Although the goals of tax reform were many, most proponents advertise it as a way to bolster the country's manufacturing capacity in an increasingly capital-intensive, high-technology society. As is the case with most pieces of tax legislation, there were clear winners and losers with this tax reform. This is the story about two robotics scientists and how taxes led a world to descend into hundreds of years of warfare. Welcome to Accounting with Subversive Asset, where we dive into the world of video game lore and taxes. As with my previous video on Yoshi's tax fraud, this video will be based on my Super Smash Bros. Ultimate tax tier listing. There will be a link in the description below for that full chart. In my last video, we discussed the challenges of identifying who can be a taxpayer in a world in which humans live and work alongside sentient animals. Today, I wanted to talk about a different tier from my tax tier list, the depreciable property tier featuring Mega Man. All disclaimers from my previous video still apply, but just to summarize, this video uses tax concepts for comedic purposes and cannot be used as tax advice. All opinions are my own, and none of these opinions reflect the position of my employer. As we discussed in the last video, personal individuals and businesses have very different tax incentives available to them under the law. Individuals are generally limited to a standard deduction, although they may deduct itemized deductions such as medical expenses if those expenses rise above the standard deduction. In the last video, I made a brief comment regarding dependents, as in previous tax years, taxpayers could reduce their taxable income through personal exemptions and dependent exemptions. However, with tax reform, dependent exemptions went out the window. In contrast, businesses can deduct a variety of ordinary and necessary expenses, and courts have defined this term very broadly. The same item of expense could be deductible to a business and non-deductible to a personal individual. In the last video, we discussed the example of animals as pets. Personal individuals may not claim pets as being dependent exemptions, but if a pet is a qualifying service animal, then it might be itemized as a medical expense. And if an animal is used in a business, then it could be deductible. And this is where we had our conflict in the last video with sentient animals. While a business may be able to deduct the salaries that it pays to its employees, those employees are presumed to be taxpayers as well, and therefore the income that they receive should be taxable on their own personal income tax returns. In contrast, a non-sentient animal, even if it's used in a trade or business, would not have to pay taxes because it's not a legal person to whom taxes can be assessed. But it goes even further, however, because different types of expenses have different rules for businesses on how and when they can be deducted. If an asset is expected to have a useful life beyond a year, then generally the rule is that expenses relating to that asset cannot be deducted immediately. Instead, the government provides certain class lives over which the asset's value is depreciated over time. If you're a small business owner, there are thresholds under which asset value may be immediately deducted. And as will become very important in this video, with tax reform, the government expanded the potentials for businesses to immediately expense to many more businesses. So that gives us our setup on Mega Man. Based on my research on Mega Man, it seems pretty clear that Mega Man isn't a robot with free will, and so Mega Man would probably safely fit in the tangible property tier as depreciable property for Dr. Light. And if you want to fight about that, please leave a comment below. So we can imagine that Mega Man would be treated as tangible depreciable property, and any income that he might earn would instead go to Dr. Light. But it's also clear that we can't just end this video here because Mega Man lore offers us so much more to discuss. Dr. Light and Dr. Wily both take dramatically different approaches to robots in the franchise, and we can investigate that. We can imagine Dr. Wily as being a slick operator who works well within the law, while Dr. Light is a maverick, pushing the boundaries of science and society. See, Dr. Wily sees robots as they are conventionally seen in society. They are simply tangible property and not legal persons. They are designed to perform tasks more efficiently than a human would. In a flashback in Mega Man 11, we see Dr. Wily developing the double gear system, a tool that will make robots more able to perform their tasks with more power or more speed. But Dr. Light opposes the double gear system. He believes that instead they should move to develop robots that have artificial intelligence, that have thinking capacities, that are more human-like. And we can see that Dr. Wily and Dr. Light worked together at some time as colleagues. But Dr. Light sabotaged Dr. Wily's research by convincing their mutual board of directors to defund Dr. Wily and to instead fund Dr. Light's experiment into more artificial intelligence for robots. I would present to you all, therefore, that this wasn't the only place where Drs. Light and Wily clashed, and the combat that we see in the game is just one theater of warfare between the two scientists. Dr. Light would have created robots to be his companions. After all, Dr. Light created Mega Man and Roll with a surprisingly human appearance. So when it came time for taxes, Dr. Light made the unheard of maverick tax move, claiming Mega Man and Roll as dependent exemptions on his own tax return. But with the tax reform in 20XX, dependent exemptions were removed from the code. And so Dr. Light needed to do something, or else he would be at an extreme tax disadvantage to Dr. Wily. See, Dr. Wily, in using the conventional classification of robots, would benefit from tax reform, as tax reform would enable all new assets to have immediate expensing of 100% of their costs. And so Dr. Wily, producing robots and believing that they are simply tangible property, would receive a great tax deduction for all of that. Dr. Light would attempt a new argument in front of the IRS. He would argue that Mega Man and Roll are his employees and that they are legal persons to whom he is entitled a salary deduction and to whom they should pick up the income on their tax returns. And so, to make this all work out, he attempted to have Mega Man and Roll file their own individual tax returns using their Dr. Light numbers as their taxpayer ID number. This would start an escalating battle in the courts between the two doctors, with each of them providing friends of the court briefs, arguing against the other's position. Dr. Light would appeal to the personhood of his robots, saying that they are human-like with free will and agency. Dr. Wily, on the other hand, would defend the status quo, arguing that robots are simply machines, simply tangible property. The battles in court would extend off court, with Wily attempting to sabotage Light. There would be no conclusive evidence linking Wily to the mysterious occurrences, but the country would be ravished by robots going rogue, and Wily would be in the background, appealing to the masses that robots simply are too prone to security defects to be given personhood status. This would lead both doctors to increasingly develop more and more advanced technology, until Light would experience a breakthrough and develop the first Reploid, a robot with true free will named X. Wily, not content to be upstaged by Light, would end up developing his own Reploid as well, Zero. And even in death, Wily would ensure that the relationship between society and robots was more complicated, because Wily would develop a virus that would occasionally cause Reploids to go maverick. As a result, hundreds of years after both Wily and Light's death, the world would continue to struggle to accept the personhood of increasingly powerful robots with emotions, feelings, free will, and above all, the desire and longing to be treated as people. Hope you enjoyed this video. The background music was my arrangement of Fuse Man's theme from Mega Man 11, and I just wanted to say, the Mavericks did nothing wrong. They live in a tyrannical society, and it's no wonder that they would rebel against that. Dr. Light is a jerk. Let me know what you'd like me to overexplain next.